Good afternoon, Coolest Coast. It's time for Coffee on the Coast, an episode of Book Banter. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Coffee on the Coast. We are here for Book Banter. That means Laura Schreiner is joining us from the Manitowoc Public Library. Laura, I'm so happy to see you.
I'm happier probably to see you. I always look forward to this. I really do. I can't tell you how much. Yeah.
So, as a librarian, what do you like about recommending books?
I think that you can connect with people and the conversation just takes off from there. And next thing they're spilling their soul and you're connecting about this or sharing that. And sometimes it's just what you need to do right then. And we find that with book groups, the way people connect, it's amazing. It's kind of like a miracle. It starts with that book and it just can develop into a relationship, a friendship, a sisterhood, whatever you want to say.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
love it.
beautiful. So, just based on like a shared story, that there's like that common
It's
ground.
yep, it's about the story. Yeah,
Very cool. Well, you've got some stories to share with us today. Let's dig right in because
sure.
there is one that I happen to be almost done reading that I'm
Yeah,
really excited to talk to you about. So let's start. The first one you've got on the docket is called Worst Case Scenario, a
right.
novel by TJ Newman. This looks pretty serious. Tell us what's
Yeah.
going on here.
So this is she wants to write in the style of Michael Crichton. She is a former bookseller and flight attendant. This is her third book. The first two have been optioned as films. I don't know for sure that they'll develop. Sometimes those things don't develop. First one was called Falling. The second one was Drowning. And this one is worst case. They're all centered on, I hate to say a plane crash, but I mean, she writes great, suspenseful. I'm just going to read one more chapter and then I'm going to read one more chapter. And next thing you know, you're powering through this book. And I just can't put her stuff down. I really love it. Yeah.
Nice. Michael Crichton was that same way for me when I read
Sure.
him back in high school. So,
Sure. Sure. I just read a quote about this one. She said, this is aspirationally like Top Gun Maverick, which I mean, I can see it, but it's really good. And it's not just the thing about this book, and I think her others, is it kind of starts with a plane crash or it starts with a situation that develops from there. So you're kind of like, well, the plane's already crashed. Like, what is there to say? And then this one goes into the community and the heroism and people, normal people doing extraordinary things and lots of stuff like that. Yeah. And it's set
interesting.
in a small town in Minnesota, I believe, with a nuclear power plant. So, I hate to say it, but you kind of relate because we had Two Creeks and we had Kewaunee nearby. And,
So,
I mean, you
yeah,
don't want to say too much, but yeah,
tell us the scenario. So there is a plane
there's a plane and
and
it's a commercial airline. They're flying along, beautiful day. The pilot has a heart attack. The cockpit is locked, as they do, and they're then they realize something's wrong. They're trying to get in there, and the first mate is in the bathroom. When the plane starts to nosedive, he hits his head and he's unconscious and can't get in. He's the only one who could theoretically get into the cockpit, but he can't because he's out of commission with a bloody, concuss itself. So this flight attendant is trying to get in there and fly the plane. Eventually she gets in there, but it's too late for her to save the plane. So, right at the beginning, the plane's down, out of commission. And the townspeople are seeing it go over. And of course, it damages the nuclear power plant, along with other parts of this little village.
so worst case scenario, right?
Yeah,
So worst case,
right,
you're already in a flight that's going down.
right.
Now it's going down, but it's heading
Yeah.
right towards a nuclear power plant.
Yeah. I mean, it takes out bridges, it takes out swaths of roadway. So the little town is kind of cut off from the world. The emergency vehicles can't really get in from anywhere else. So they're left to their own devices, the EMTs, the firemen. The characters are really well done. They really are. Like you find yourself caring about these people, and it ends up in a situation. I won't say too much, but some people have to make decisions that they're not going to come back from. Let's put it that way. They are going to have to make a decision for the good of everyone else or their own, at least short-term survival. And it's wrenching. It really is. It's got a lot of elements to it. I really like this small town really comes together, and families that are kind of torn apart are trying to reform after the fact of how can we get along without this person, but we're going to form a new reality. And I don't know. I mean, it's not for everybody. I will give you that. It's absolutely not a book for everybody. I happen to like this kind of thing on occasion, and she writes it really well. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like an interesting premise because it doesn't occur because of some malfeasance, right?
Right.
Nobody's
Right.
up
And
to
not at
some
all.
evil task or anything.
Not at
It's
all.
just
No.
this terrible, unfolding of events
Right.
that
Right.
ends up being this worst case scenario. And then, like
Right.
you said, it demonstrates some of the best of humanity rising up.
It does really. And you find yourself caring about these people. It's just so silly because you know this is a story, but it's like I'm rooting so hard for this person for it to go a certain way. And
Isn't that what makes the best book though, right? Is when you actually care, when you're invested in something that's unfolding?
sure, right. If you don't care, then what's the point? If you don't care about the people or yeah, why would you bother even reading it? Yeah,
Yeah. I
just
recently stopped a book 10 chapters in because I was like,
just wasn't
I don't care about any of these people. Like it's just not
so
doing it for
true.
me.
Isn't that true? Sometimes you're not connecting, you don't care, and I really could care less. And there's, you know what? There's better stuff to read.
Right,
So, yeah,
right.
go on with something better. Yeah,
Well, and I like the fact too that you said TJ Newman herself had been a flight attendant.
right,
So
right.
I imagine her descriptions of being on a plane and,
Yeah, yeah.
be
So
really authentic.
I don't fly much. I don't know, but I assume they're very authentic. And she just puts you in that situation where this could be any person playing any of these roles. Kind of what would you do? And here's this child trapped in a minivan dangling off a bridge, and things that are heart wrenching. But it's done so well, and it just shows the heroism of people just banding together. I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to give this situation everything I have, and I find that admirable. I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah,
Wow, it sounds like a great story.
it is.
Okay, so then this seems completely different. This one
It
is
is.
called
Yeah.
Simon Sort of Says by
Right.
Aaron Bow. And it
Right.
looks like there's a lot of different stickers and seals on
Right.
the
Right.
cover.
Right. So we just did this as a book discussion at the library last week, last Thursday. It's a tough premise. This seventh grade boy is the sole survivor of a school shooting in Omaha. So that is a gut wrenching thing. But there's a disclaimer right at the beginning. They don't get graphic about it. They don't even talk a ton about the specifics. You just know he survived an awful thing. And that would have happened when he was in fifth grade at a school in Omaha. His family, he's an only child. His family, to kind of save him, he was very well known because he was photographed as the only child who survived in this classroom. So he's pretty well known, but over time, people have maybe forgotten some things. And so 2 years later, his parents pick up and move him to this little town, which is fictional, called Grin and Barrett, Nebraska. His mom's a funeral director. His dad is a deacon in the Catholic Church who also plays an instrument called the sackbut, which is something like a trombone or something. I don't really know all of that.
Is that a real instrument?
It is a real instrument.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So you can go down that path of like researching that if you want to and all of that. But so this little boy is an only child. His parents are trying to protect him. They move him to this town which has no internet access. It's a quiet zone. And there are some places like that where you're not allowed internet or anything like that because they're trying to absorb any radio signals coming in from elsewhere, if you will.
Oh, yes, 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 from outer space, right?
Yeah, right, right. So this town, although the internet, he's an internet famous person and such, and but there are no cell phones here. There really just aren't those things, so people really don't know who he is, and he doesn't tell who he is until eventually someone finds out. But he forms this wonderful friendship with some really quirky kids, and they're seventh graders, so it's got the seventh grade angst. It's got crazy animal characters I just loved. Like I just adored. There's a dog named Todd who's a failed service dog. He opens the refrigerator and gets himself beers because he's got hip dysplasia and he can't take medication. So he just has a beer a day, but he goes and gets his own beer out of the fridge because he's a trained service dog, but he failed because he didn't care enough about pleasing people. He just wanted to please himself. So Todd is the patriarch of this family of golden retrievers that his friend's family raises. So then this nice little boy, Simon, gets one of the puppies, which becomes his dear friend named Hercules. And it's a beautiful book. I know it starts with a tough premise, and I was reluctant, but she's a wonderful writer. She makes you care about this child and his family. And there's a crazy peacock. There's a bunch of emus that escape. There's a squirrel that gets fried in the church behind the altar. There's really madcap stuff, but there's touching and beautiful stuff. There's friendships. There's what will you do to protect people. And it's just really a beautiful, beautiful book. It really is.
Is this sort of a YA, like a young adult?
Yeah, it's considered a children's book because of his age, but yeah, young adult, that sort of thing. It kind of flows. And there's so many really great books being written for, that audience that we don't shy away from those book group wise, like we will include those sometimes if we think it's exceptional. And it is. It's a really good book. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, there's no reason to shy away from that, and sometimes
No.
it makes it an easier read, and sometimes it's also, I think, valuable because it gives you the perspective
Right.
of that
Right.
age group, which
Right.
I'm pretty far removed from these days, so
Same.
I kind of welcome
Same.
any insight.
Same. I could kind of relate a little bit. I mean, not having been in seventh grade for a while, but he's an only child. And I think his experience was different being an only child and being very, very much protected by parents, or you bond differently with your parents when you're an only child, which you might know a little bit about, but it's a different experience. This would have been a different story if he had had siblings, because then you would have had to uproot them and move all of them and everything. He would have been the famous, infamous person. It's a different story, but his parents are beautiful. I mean, there's some really funny moments, but there's probably more heartwarming, but it's just enough to keep it going. It's fast paced. It's a children's book. You don't have to put a ton of effort, but you end up caring. The common denominator is you care about these people deeply. Yeah.
Right. So what are the different seals that are on the cover?
So it won a National Book Award, and then that is what is that? I don't have the book in front of me. Schneider Family Book Award. I think that's a Newbery or Caldecott. I have to say I don't know my children's awards as I should, but it's a well awarded book, and she's Canadian. She's received a lot of Canadian book awards, which might be the origin maybe of some of those that don't seem as familiar. She writes really well. Yeah.
Okay, so from everything that you described about the book, I still don't have a clear idea of why the title is what it is.
I don't know. I don't know why it's called Simon Sort of Says. He's kind of trying to fit in while he knows he doesn't quite fit in. He's trying to keep a secret that he's afraid people will find out. And then when they find out, he doesn't maybe react the way you think he might. But, who am I to say how you would react to being found out to be this person? And then the whole school this current school is trying to support him when they realize who he is. But he doesn't want that. So then he kind of has some moments where it's really tough. And then there is a tornado drill. The tornado's coming through town. He's at school. The sirens are going off. And it really takes him to a bad moment, which is when he kind of is found out. And then he hasn't told his closest friends. He hasn't told anybody who he is and why necessarily they're there. So he hasn't quite told the whole truth. He wants to protect some things. But he finds these wonderful friends that will do anything for him, and he will do anything from them ultimately. It's a neat book, but I know the premise at first people have maybe at times kind of shied away, like, I don't want to read that, and I get it. But if you give it a chance, I think you can really just relate to these characters.
And there's real value in seeing how characters in a story
Yes.
deal with sorting out something like that.
Right.
Like what he was confronted with, to tell,
Right.
to not to tell.
Right.
To,
Again, yeah, it's that resilience again. You come back to resilience and connecting and all those sorts of things that are real. Most of us have had something similar where you had to decide how much to disclose, how much to keep close, and what's going to happen if you do either of those things. So I think he maybe have experienced a little bit of relief when it was found out, because he knew he was going to be found out at some point. So yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, we've got another recommendation here, Laura.
Yeah. Oh, I love this one.
The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum.
This was a debut in 2022. He has since written another one called Symphony of Secrets, which is has been out a while. He's got one coming out in May called Dark Maestro. Brendan Slocum is an award-winning violinist. He's an educator. He's an author. He happens to be African-American, just as his character is here, of an African-American violin virtuoso. Is a kind of rare thing still. And so this young man is coming from a very complicated family dynamic. His family's not overly supportive. His mother's really awful. I'm sorry, his mom is just hateful. The rest of his family, there's a few that support him, but they don't understand him. He's got this gift. He needs to get the music out. His grandma loves him and does anything for him, but grandma doesn't live forever, of course. But how he ends up with this fiddle, it's the family fiddle. It's like his great grandpa's fiddle buried in the attic. He gets it out. It looks a wreck, takes it to be cleaned and serviced, so he has at least his own instrument to play. And it turns out to be a Stradivarius.
What?
So I know, but it's such bad, terrible disrepair that no one had a clue. So, and then there's suspicion of how did this African-American kid end up with the Stradivarius? People are looking at him suspiciously and, all sorts of things. ultimately it's stolen right before he is to compete in the, it's called the Tchaikovsky competition, which as far as I know is a real thing in Moscow for virtuosos on the violin. And it's Van Cliburn was the first American, not necessarily violinist, classical musicians. Van Cliburn actually won it in the early 60s, maybe. Americans don't tend to win this competition. But then he has to find another violin because that one's gone. And there's this whole mystery about where is the violin, who stole it, because there's another family that has a claim. The family that owned his great grandpop, who was their slave,
Oh,
that family is saying they own it. He can't find any paperwork to disprove or refute any kind of claim. Yeah, it's his family just wants him to declare it lost, stolen, whatever, because it's insured and they want the money. They're not being very supportive. He's got a girlfriend who's supportive. He's a wonderful character. I listened to this one, and the reader is amazing, does a beautiful job. And if you do listen to it, they play interludes of music between sections of the books too, which is kind of neat. So it's a wonderful book. I can't say that enough.
It sounds so complicated.
It's very complicated, but it moves really, really, really quickly. I can't say that enough. There's this intricate plot, but it just keeps moving. I was so sorry when it ended. I really was. I loved it. Yeah.
That's really the sign of the best kind of story, right?
Yeah.
And you
Book
don't want
groups
it to
love it.
end.
Right. I've had book groups recommend it. Men love it. Women love it. It's not just a woman's story. I think there's things you can relate to. Again, very relatable. There's some racial issues where he's in the South and he's pulled over for things that maybe someone else wouldn't be pulled over for, and things aren't always easy. He's a wonderful, resilient young man, and you just root so hard for him.
It sounds like it really gives you things to think about.
It does. So much to think about and discuss. Yeah.
Okay, so is this the first one of those three that you mentioned?
This is the first. Yes.
And are they related? Do you have to read them in any kind of order?
I don't think so. I think they're all what I can determine, they're all standalones. I would love to see his story continue because he is amazing. This young man, he is incredible. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to check it out.
It's
Okay,
very good. Yeah.
you've got one more recommendation for us
Sure.
today.
Oh,
This one is
Yeah.
Becoming Madam Secretary by Stephanie Dre. Now, I
Right.
know it's a novel, but this is definitely historical fiction.
Sure.
And I happen to
You
be
have
reading
it.
it.
I know. Yay! I know. Isn't that strange? Isn't that fun? Yeah.
And you know
yeah.
what? It's borrowed from the library.
It
This
is.
is going to be one of the hardest books for me to return
I
because
know.
it is so good. I have
It
50
is.
pages left to go.
It's a large book. You've been reading a long time to get to that point. It's a really large. Look at you. Yeah. I loved it. Yeah.
Tell us about the story. What do you love about this story?
Well, she's a trailblazer, obviously a female in a man's world. This is the Great Depression. Before the Great Depression, she is kind of instrumental in trying to, and she did change child labor laws, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, all of these things. She is not familiar with FDR when she meets him. He's really kind of a political nobody at that point, and she's not too impressed with him. She thinks he's a dilettante, and he was kind of at the point. He didn't get serious about things till maybe after polio and after he started to think about things. They were not fast friends. They were not allies.
Which I have to say, sorry to interrupt you, but it surprised
No, it's
me.
true.
I didn't realize that FDR didn't have polio until he was an adult.
I didn't know that either. No. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And that's kind of part of the story too, is like he changed, people change, but she was just this fierce, and she's fierce. I mean, she is not backing down for anything. She has a child. She has a marriage that is very complicated. It's kind of hard for her to stay the course and stay focused, but boy, she just keeps on pushing. She believes so strongly in Social Security and safety for workers and families who survive and don't have a livelihood. She just doesn't stop. She's just a fierce advocate for the underrepresented, the underprivileged, smart, hardworking man, and a trailblazer, because very few women, like no one, was doing it.
Right. She was the first female cabinet secretary appointed by
Yes.
any president in our history.
Exactly. Yep. And a remarkable person. Yeah. I think more people should know her story. People know of her. Yeah. Well, as I told you before, I've heard of her in Dirty Dancing when they talked about Frances Perkins being Baby's, I guess, namesake, or she was the namesake of her. And I was like, I don't know who this person is at all. But eventually I kept seeing her in historical things. And
Until I read this story, I had never heard of her, and I can't believe that. I wish every woman would read this book. It is that important. And I wish I wish in government we had 1,000
Don't
Frances
you?
Perkins working for us right now.
Don't you wish her? Yeah, she's just relentless in this feeling that there needed to be a safety net and all sorts of things. I don't know what the world would look like without her. What do you think? I mean, what would the world look like if there hadn't been a Frances Perkins? I don't know.
You know, one of the things that she works hard for, like you mentioned, was the creation of Social Security, and
Yeah,
she really had to keep it front of mind,
right,
top of mind for the
right,
president to
right,
also make it a priority. And
right,
yeah, if she hadn't been advocating for it, if she didn't have that unique perspective that she
right.
brought, we probably never would have had it. And it was
I
a game changer because, like you were saying, the shirtwaist factory, the reason that happened is these industrialists would get all the women, the children, the
right,
young girls into the factory to do the hard work and lock the doors.
sure.
So
So
there
they
was
can't.
no safety.
No, but they can't leave, and they weren't treating them very well. But they wanted to get 12 hours work out of them or whatever, a 60-hour work week or more. Didn't care about them as people. Didn't care about safety. Not at all.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
I
One
don't
of her
know.
first initiatives, I was shocked, said she worked to get the work week reduced
Yes,
to
yes.
54 hours. To 54. I
I
mean,
know.
that's like out of hand.
It is. Yeah, I don't and it was hard for me to believe too when you think back, it's not that long ago. I mean, it's not 100 years ago. So I think things we tend to take for granted that this is how it's always been. 100 years ago, it wasn't anything like that. And,
Right.
maybe somebody else would have come up with some things eventually, but the fact is she's the one that did it.
Right. And
Yeah.
in this story, when she's, first starting her career and getting on the track before she becomes Madam Secretary, women don't even have the right to vote.
No.
And so they go through the whole suffragette struggle,
Right.
and women finally get the right to vote in New York State. And
Yeah.
somebody says, "So, who are you going to vote for?" And it just took her aback. Like,
Right.
no one has ever asked me that question before.
Right. Isn't it it's just unbelievable how we really have come pretty far. I know there's things that could be better, but my goodness, we've come a long way because of people like her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an
And
important story. I was shocked that I had never heard of it.
she should be a household name, don't you think? She really should be. Yeah.
I
Not because
absolutely.
she's a woman, just because she was such a force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, this kind of history, being the labor secretary,
Right.
it could be dry as paint to read about, but it is
It could
not.
be.
This book
Right.
is so exciting. The way it just, I don't know, pulls you into the historical setting of the time. Like,
Yeah.
her best friend Mary Rumsey being this socialite. It just there's so much
Yeah.
that's delightful about the story.
I agree. It could have been really dull. And I mean, I would probably have read it anyway because I love history, but oh my gosh, it is anything but dull. It is there too. I'll just read another few pages. I'll read another chapter and then you go into the next one because you can't stop right there. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
When I first saw how thick the book was, and I'll just show you
I
again,
know.
right? At first I was like, "Whoa, that's gonna take a long time." But right,
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
said, it's like, "I've gotta just read another page. I
yeah.
just gotta get to the end of the next chapter."
Yeah, let
Maybe just the
everything
end of
else
the
go. Let everything else go. I have to get to the end of this story, right? Yeah,
a little
yeah.
dust bunny runs across the
It
floor. I'm like, "I'll
doesn't
get to you
matter.
later."
It doesn't matter. Eat food. We can order takeout. We don't care about the cook. We've got to read this book, right? I hear you. Same, same. Just lose yourself in that world. And again, think about what it looks like without people, certainly like her, like a lot of people who made changes we just take for granted. They don't happen by themselves, you know?
And I love how, I don't just her manner of speaking and
I
everything.
know.
She
Yeah.
always just kept it she never, like, lost her cool.
No,
She
she's
just had this turn of phrase that
yeah, so self-contained, and people would be, baiting her. They really were. They weren't very nice to her sometimes, and she just single-mindedly went on.
yeah,
Unbelievable. Yeah.
I love it. I love her. I've already recommended the book to a couple of friends,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I think it's great. It would be great for a book group. But again, it's a big commitment to read this book. It is not a 200-page book, but I think it reads like it's half its size because you just can't stop, you
it's
know?
true.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah.
Yeah, and the story just fills you up. Honestly, for I was thinking about a book club with this book and
Sure.
how it would be awesome to just stop after every chapter. To just stop and
Yes.
be like, "Let's just talk about,
About this, because there's so much going on. I agree. Absolutely. Historical context and legal things and oh my gosh, so much going on.
so much going on." What
So
a
much
great
going on.
recommendation.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you like it.
Wow. Laura, these have all been great recommendations. I just want to run through them once more
Sure.
really quick. We talked about Worst Case Scenario, a novel by TJ Newman. We talked about Simon Sort of Says by Aaron Bow. We talked about The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum,
Yep.
and also Becoming Madam Secretary by Stephanie Dre.
Yay. Yeah. Thank you.
What a pleasure. I just loved this conversation,
So
Laura.
do I. So do I. I have next month's pretty much ready. There might be one more I include. I've got a few ready for next month, so I
Are
hope
you
you do.
currently reading something?
I am. I've just finished a really great Ann Tyler. Ann Tyler's latest. I don't know if you read her at all. It's pretty. It's not crazy suspenseful anything. Wonderful, just domestic fiction. She's a wonderful writer. So I'm just finishing that one called 3 Days in June. I'd like to talk about that next week, or next month. And I'm just listening to one called What Happened to Kitty Carr. Have you heard about Kitty Carr? I get it wrong, but anyway, this lady's name is Kitty Carr, and that's a really good one too. I might talk about that one. It's older. It's 7 or 8 years old. I just kind of came across it because I've been listening to the playaways, which we now have at the library. So I just want to put a moment in for that. If people have seen those little orange devices that contain a book and you can listen to through your audio on your car or with earbuds. I don't know if we've talked about this. You maybe talked about those with others, but I haven't had a chance. I love those things. So it's just that book loaded onto that device. You put a AAA battery in and just listen away. And I'm listening to Kitty Carr right now. It's very good.
They're really cool. It is such a cool
They are.
device, and
It is
I'm
a cool.
glad that our library has them available.
Yeah. That's a new thing, but they're moving. I mean, it was a little bit weird at first because people didn't know what to do with them, but we have some instructions and, we're happy to explain them to people. They're really kind of neat devices. Yeah.
I agree. I agree too, because you don't need any internet, any Wi-Fi, anything
not
like
at all.
that. Just a AAA battery, and you're all set to go.
Yeah, it's very self-contained. You're walking, you're doing whatever, you're in the car, we have speakers also. You can plug them into their own dedicated speakers. So we have those if people are just doing things at home or just, lounging at home and just want to listen. It's getting harder to find CD players, honestly. We still have books on CD, but a lot of people don't have CD players in their car or in their home. Here's another way to get an audiobook to people. So yeah.
And they don't get damaged like a CD
They
does.
don't. That's a really big thing. I've never had a defective one in the many I've listened to. CDs, as you know, yeah, easily damaged. Now it skips. You miss the story. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're talking about the playaway and combining it with the speaker, that made me think,
Right.
oh, how perfect. You could listen to a book. You could
could.
also check out one of the cake pans that you have at the library.
Yes.
Bake a cake while listening to a book.
Sure. I mean, we can just put this all together. Absolutely. you know it. We're just going to bring everything. We're just going to come in and take over your home. Just be part of your life you can't do without.
You know what? I already cannot do without the Manitowoc Public Library.
That is fantastic. Nor can we do without you. This is just something we look forward to. Teresa, I always loved speaking with you. I still see Teresa. We talk about you. It's a high
Give
point
her
of our
my
month.
best.
I sure will. It's just such a high point to speak with you. It's just, we love it. Love it.
Well, mutual, very mutual. All right. Thank you so much for watching today. My guest, Laura Schreiner from Manitowoc Public Library. I'm your host, Tina Prigge. Keep turning those pages and enjoy reading. We'll see you next time, everyone.
Thank you.